All right, well, this begins our executive meeting of the Interagency Equity Advisory Committee. Thanks everyone for being here today, in person and virtually. It's really, really special and powerful to be sitting here with you all. I will pass it to Doug to kick us off with logistics, and then we will start our meeting. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to start with roll call. We're going to call the roll for the EAC committee members. Martha Armis Kelly, Alexandria Contreras, Michael Despain, Ana Gonzalez, Herb Hastings,
Present.
Peggy Martinez, she unmuted. Peggy Martinez. Peggy, are you there? Amber Novi, sorry. Amber. Naila Pope Harden.
Present.
Axel Santana.
Here.
Connie Stewart.
Present.
Randy Torres Van Vleck.
Present.
Stella Ursua. Cheryl Villegas Walker.
Here.
William Walker. Christine Williams.
Here.
Thank you. Welcome to the Interagency Transportation Equity Advisory Committee meeting. The committee's focus will be on elevating diverse and historically marginalized voices, and will advise the California Transportation Commission, California State Transportation Agency, and the Department of Transportation on how to achieve meaningful outcomes in transportation equity, environmental justice, and equitable income opportunities, especially as related to transportation planning and programming. The meeting agenda is located on the Commission's website at www.catc.ca.gov. Spanish language and American Sign Language translations are being provided for this meeting. You can access these services through the Interpretations tab at the bottom of the screen. You will need to select which translation service you are seeking. Please use the Q&A tab if you have questions about this, and staff can assist. Live closed captioning is also available. Please select the Show Captions tab at the bottom of your screen. There are a number of language options available there to choose from. Any document created for this committee can be translated into any language you need. Simply email us at ctc@catc.ca.gov, and we will have them returned to you as quickly as possible. If you're on the agenda to make a presentation, please do your best to be succinct. Please remember to speak at a steady pace to allow our translating services adequate time for accurate translations. If you're presenting remotely, we hope that you will turn on your camera during your presentation. For the members of the public, we welcome comments from the public as a part of each item at this meeting. You should see the webinar control panel, likely located at the bottom of your screen. There you'll find the raised hand and Q&A tabs. We encourage you to use the raise hand feature as soon as we reach the item to give the system time to acknowledge you. Committee staff will let you know when it's your turn to make your comment. Alternately, you may use the questions tab to submit your comment. Committee staff will read the comment on your behalf. As a reminder, each registered attendee is provided a unique link and phone number to access the webinar. These should not be shared with other participants, as this can create confusion for staff when making comments. Please do your best to be concise. Please remember to speak at a steady pace to allow our translating services adequate time for accurate translations. Please make sure your comments add new information. If you agree with the comments of a previous speaker, simply make that statement. We ask that you make your point in 3 minutes or less. If for some reason we have many speakers on a single topic, we reserve the right to limit comments to 1 minute as needed. Thank you for joining us today. I'll turn it back over to Sequoia. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. So I want to extend a sincere and deep welcome to our committee members, commissioners, agency executives, and members of the public to our inaugural executive meeting of the Interagency Equity Advisory Committee. My name is Sequoia Erasmus, and I serve on the planning team at the California Transportation Commission. And our interagency team has been working really, really hard to make this event possible. And on this very special and rainy first day of spring, we're so grateful for all that work and collaboration that went into this meeting. So thanks to those of you who are here in person, virtually. I will go ahead now and turn it to Avital to lead us in tab 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Sequoia. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Avital Barnea with the California State Transportation Agency, and I will be introducing tab 2, which is introductions from leadership from the California State Transportation Agency. We have Undersecretary Mark Tollefson here, followed by remarks from the California Transportation Commission Chair Leanne Eager, and followed by remarks by Caltrans Executive Director Tony Tavares. And so now I will hand it over to Undersecretary Tollefson. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Avital. Really appreciate it. And good afternoon. And thank you to LA Metro for hosting the event today. And also a big thank you to our CalSTA, CTC, and Caltrans staff who helped make this possible, dealing with all the planning and logistics that went into it. So I am Mark Tollefson. I am the Undersecretary at the California State Transportation Agency. I think today marks actually my 4th month on the job, so relatively new. I previously served as a Deputy Cabinet Secretary in the Governor's Office, dealing with our transportation, housing, and homelessness issues. So as far as today's meeting, this is a really significant day. It's our first official meeting of this important committee. We've never done anything like this, so it's a really big deal. At CalSTA, we often talk about our core 4 priorities: climate, economic prosperity, safety, and equity. Really important pillars in terms of the work that we do. But at the end of the day, our work is really about people and how we create a safer, more accessible, more equitable transportation system for all Californians. And each of you serving on this committee, by the nature of being a member of this committee, is an advocate for people, and specifically advocates for people who frequently have been overlooked or disregarded. When I look around and absorb, what it means to actually be on this Equity Advisory Committee, one word comes to mind, and it's selflessness. I can't thank, the committee members enough for contributing your time and input here and being here in person. Each of you as an individual community member is critical to this mission. As a cohesive committee, members have the potential to make invaluable changes to people's lives. We're giving you, all of you members, great influence over crucial decisions that will impact people for generations to come. A huge responsibility that each of you has embraced seriously and with impassioned commitment. I'd mentioned our core 4 priorities earlier, and we really have embraced equity as a through line in all the decisions that we make at CalSTA. But with that, it's really on this committee to help hold us accountable. It's really, one thing to put things down on paper, but it's another to actually see actionable results. So I want you all to push us, to guide us. We really want to hear your input. And I know each of you will, because you were chosen specifically for this role. Our vetting process for the committee members was all consuming, and for good reason. This is such an important undertaking that the membership requires a combination of qualifying backgrounds, lived experiences, knowledge, perspectives, and more. And even more importantly, your willingness to do much needed life-altering work. So it's truly an honor to be here with you today. I'm really looking forward to hearing from all of you and the discussion of key priorities for the year to come. And this is going to be the start of something truly incredible. Also, thank you for your service to fellow Californians. And I believe this is going to be a really successful, worthwhile delegation. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to CTC Chair Leanne Eager.
Thank you, Undersecretary Tollefson. So you obviously said everything I was going to say, so I'm going to say ditto. But I am Leanne Eager. I'm chair of the California Transportation Commission. On behalf of all of my commissioners. I really want to thank all of you for dedicating your time, your expertise, your passion for the work that we're doing here. We have been working on this a long time, I know, and we've all been seeing each other through that one little square for so long. So it's amazing to see everyone come here together, and we know it's been really hard work. And as the Undersecretary said, you were all chosen for your expertise. You were all chosen for your diversity. You were all chosen for the passion that you have for the work that we're all hoping to do in the future. And we know that it's not going to be easy. We know how difficult it has been to get to this point. And now that we're here doing this work together, we all just want to say thank you. And our role now is to listen to you. Now we step back and say, you tell us what direction you think we should go in. You tell us what we've been doing well and what we should be doing differently, because that's our role now, is to really listen, to understand, and then to put it into practice. And so we just wanted to thank all of you. We wanted to say how much we appreciate the hard work of Sequoia and her team and all of you for being here, the hard work that you've done so far. And we look forward to seeing where this leads us in the future. And we promise that we will take your recommendations and take them to heart and really work together to make this a better transportation system for all of us. So thank you. And now I'll turn it over to Director Tavares.
Well, thank you, Chair Eager. Going last, everything's been said already, but I think it's fair to repeat some of those comments as well. First of all, I'm glad to be back in Los Angeles. It's nice to be back with everyone here, and I do appreciate everyone's time on this advisory council. As the chair and the undersecretary both said, you were all selected because you have a lot of expertise in this area. You have a commitment, passion for equity. And so we're so excited to be working with you and to listen to your lived experiences and take that all into consideration. Transportation is an issue that everyone needs. It should not be necessarily a benefit. It should be a right for everyone. And it's a basic need. And so listening to all of you and being able to incorporate your experiences, your comments, your suggestions into how we deliver better transportation solutions throughout California is so important to Caltrans, to CalSTA, and to the CTC. And we want to deliver benefits going forward, not delivering more harms as we move forward. And we want to reconnect those communities and neighborhoods that have been separated by some of the transportation system in California. So without necessarily going in and repeating a lot of the things that have already been said, let me just share with me. I'm an engineer by trade, but I'm a planner by heart. And what I mean is, I think as we move through this journey and go through this journey, we need to connect our hearts and our minds when we deliver transportation solutions. And I think from a Caltrans perspective, we are changing the way we address, the way we approach projects, the way we approach transportation, and we are connecting our hearts and our minds, and we want to connect that with all of you. So with that, thank you everyone for being here. I look forward to hearing your suggestions, hearing from all of you today, and I'm going to sit back and listen. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Tavares. Thank you, Chair Eager. Thank you, Undersecretary Tolleson. I am going to hand it over to Carolyn Abrams now for tab 3.
Thank you, Avital. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. So we wanted to kick it off with some introductions and really get a sense of who's in the room, who are the committee members. We also want to hear from the commissioners and some of our other key staff from our agencies. So I'm going to just do this in the order about the room, and we'll start in the back over here with Cheryl. And we have a couple of things that we'd like you to cover in your introductions. So your name, your region, and your professional or your organizational affiliation. But then we'd also like to hear what your hope or your vision is for the EAC. I want you to do all of this in about 2 minutes. So we have a lot of folks here in person. We want to make sure everyone has a chance to share their remarks. So let's try and keep it to about 2 minutes, but we won't be, cutting your mic or anything like that. So go ahead, Cheryl.
Okay, first and foremost, I want to thank staff for putting this all together, knowing it's a lot of work with a lot of moving parts and herding cats. My name is Cheryl Villegas Walker. I'm a past city council member from the city of El Centro in Imperial County. So I'm about 12 miles north of Mexico, about 45 minutes from Yuma, Arizona, the only California county that sits on both the international border and borders another state. During those 25 years on the city council, I served as chair of the Imperial County Transportation Commission, president of SCAG, Southern California Association of Governance, president of the League of California Cities, as well as CalCog, which is where I had the good fortune of meeting Tamika. So it's wonderful to be here among a lot of friends. To get here today, I drove 5 minutes in my car to get to my plane, to get on a bus, to take a subway to get here. I am a huge fan of transportation and am really looking forward to making sure that everyone has equitable access to transportation, including all populations, special needs students, wherever you fit on that spectrum. So again, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. Was that 2 minutes? Whew.
Good morning, good afternoon now. Thank you for putting this together. My name is Alex Contreras. I am with the Southeast LA County area. I represent the Happy City Coalition, which is a coalition that I co-founded back in 2021 to focus on people first land use policy. We specifically formed together to bring more housing to the area, as well as fight a freeway expansion that would either tear down part of the elementary school that I attended growing up, or the park that I played in, and hundreds of my neighbors' homes, which is why I jumped at the chance to be here today, and I'm really excited to be here with all of you. My hope and my vision is to make sure that as someone who has had multiple lived experiences with struggling to find housing that is close to work, and then finding transportation that could reliably take me to work, I hope to bridge the gap between housing and transportation policy, as they are the different sides of the same coin, and champion people first land use policies. So thank you all again. Excited to be here and excited to get to work.
So we'll have everyone go. So Commissioner Falcone, feel free to introduce yourself as well. And then, sorry, Connie, we'll come back to you all.
Oh, there you go. There it is. Good afternoon, Clarissa Reyes Falcon, Commissioner with the California Transportation Commission. Been on the commission now for about a year and a half, and was appointed by President Pro Tem Senator Tony Atkins, and to fill in Senator Kehoe's term. I am from the San Diego region, and going into this commission, very, very excited about the equity work. I was so refreshed in becoming a commissioner, and the first meeting that I had was actually to listen to the equity advisory group at the time, before it was formerly now EAC. And I have to say, I just want to share with the EAC members that whenever we talk about equity in our hearings, it is probably the most energized and most passionate issue that we all engage in. We are very, very interested in incorporating your work here into what we do in terms of our future transportation investments and what we do now, particularly as it relates to the guidelines, SB1 guidelines, and other funding guidelines. So, we will be looking to you for your, your feedback and ideas and vision. And so honored to be here among you and to meet you in person. And thanks for having me.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hillary Norton, and I'm one of the California Transportation Commissioners. I am from the LA region, and I'm from Council District 14 in the LA region, which is the council district that has been bisected by the most number of freeways in the city. I am very excited about this endeavor because I have found that every single one of our meetings, as Clarissa was saying, is all about learning more about everyone's lived experience. California is one of the most diverse states. It's huge. I believe 1 in 4 people in poverty that are Americans are Californians. So we need to be very mindful about how our transportation system can provide access and opportunity, but can also do harm. And so everyone's lived experience has really been fascinating to me. I am also a very big advocate for people who travel with different abilities and wheelchair accessible vehicle travel. How we're going to help people who need those additional services is really important to me. We are hosting an Olympics and a Paralympics, and I feel like we're not yet where we need to be on the Paralympic side. I'm also, as a female transit rider, I think safety and the safety of women traveling with other people. We were on the system today and asking about why there aren't bathrooms in the system, because if you've been a mom trying to work with a child who has to go, it's not an option. So thinking about what we need to do to make our system accessible, friendly, and allow us to travel with the same dignity that seems to be afforded to car travelers is one of the things that we care about the most.
Hi, everyone. I'm Connie Stewart. I'm from Humboldt County. I live in Arcata, California. I'm probably known best as the broadband queen. I come from a very challenging region geographically. We have the most seismically active area in the lower 48, and oftentimes are cut off from the world, from the state of California by landslides and flooding. We have sinked roads right now and other challenges. I live on the unceded territory of the Wiyot tribe and have the pleasure of working with about 14 tribes in our region. And so care very deeply about equity for the tribes, and even have put them in my will. I work for Cal Poly Humboldt. And so my hopes are that we not only do a better job at planning with equity in mind, but that we implement with equity in mind. And so, the state has a challenge of putting 10,000 miles of broadband in. And some of the most challenging areas that I've worked to try for 20 years to get broadband into are on that 10,000 mile map. And so that it's going to be critical that we get those to the most remote places, which in many cases are travel lands. And those tribes have been applying for money to do fiber to the home projects, and they will be cut off if we do not use our transportation system to get that broadband to them. So that's one of my major passions. I didn't get my driver's license until I was 37 years old because I'm a child of an agoraphobic mother, and some of the phobia came, and would love to not actually drive on a road. I respect people who love to drive, but I'm not one of them. So alternative transportation is really, really important to me. I was able to live 37 years and get everywhere I needed to because of where I chose to buy my house and where I chose to work. And so I want other people to be able to have living wage jobs along a good transportation system. So I'll stop there and say thank you.
Thank you and good afternoon. I don't like driving either, especially on days like this. It's been very hectic day to day on the road. But I'm Michelle Martinez, California Transportation Commissioner. I was appointed by Governor Newsom representing the Orange County area, but I now live in Long Beach. So I would say a hybrid now of Orange County, Long Beach. one thing that I would say, and I think it's very special to be here today, is that we're turning to a new chapter here in California. As Director Tavares mentioned, as Chairwoman Eager mentioned, and I can never pronounce your last name. Tolson? Tollefson mentioned, is that as we look at this new chapter, we want your insight. And I believe, as all commissioners as well, we hope to get your insight so that we could not only act clearly, but move forward in a wise way. I believe the only way to do that is collectively. And when we talk about equity, it has to be collectively and in collaboration, because I will say that the human spirit of who we are as people is under attack because our systems are so divided and broken. And so it's my hope that with all your beautiful faces here today, that you will hold us accountable and that you will provide a spirit of collaboration, of vision that instills love, because that's what equity is. And, you know, I don't mean to get all fluffy and lovey-dovey here, but essentially that's what we're focused on. We're focused on human power, on people, not policies, right? It's the people that will drive our policies. And it's good people like you who are in this room. So thank you.
Thank you. And good afternoon, everybody. My name is Axel Santana. I'm an associate at PolicyLink, he, him, his pronouns. PolicyLink is a national organization focused on equity, and we're based out of the San Francisco Bay Area, Oakland, California, which I spent the last 8 years living there, but now I'm based out of Santa Ana, California. So thinking about the cross California sort of issues that we deal with every day. But my hope for and vision for the EAC, I would say, is thinking about how we can use this committee to think about repairing past harms, as well as prioritizing community voices, and also, of course, centering equity, as was mentioned by my colleagues earlier, but also thinking about how we leverage this moment for equitable implementation of all the federal funding that's coming down, and thinking about how we make sure that infrastructure and transportation resources are used in the most equitable way. And also to your my colleagues' points earlier, how to strengthen and prioritize public transportation and, you know, getting cars off the road as much as we can. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Adonia Lugo. I am one of the members of the Transportation Commission. I was appointed last May by Governor Newsom, and I use she, her, hers pronouns. I live here in traditional and unceded Tongva territory, and I was able to get here on the Expo line and then the subway this morning. So feel very fortunate that this is happening locally. I am really excited about this development. So when I joined the commission last year, I was surprised when I went to my first meeting in June, and it seemed like everybody on the commission was talking about equity and being a champion for equity. And I had to kind of go, so what was I appointed to do exactly? Because that's usually my role. I am an anthropologist who works on the intersection of race and class and mobility. And I work in the University of California Institute of Transportation Studies system based here at UCLA as an equity research manager. And what I've seen in my not quite a year yet on the commission is that, you know, we're in a moment of opportunity. The door is opening, and we have a lot of work to do with figuring out how to start just parading through that door with the really solid ideas that I know you all have from your work in communities on the ground, helping to define, you know, what is it that we should be investing in? What is the community capacity that has been so sorely starved and underinvested in, you know, the past, I mean, however you want to define it, 500 years. And how do we start, you know, really putting resources toward building that community capacity? What are the new names we need to start using to call the kinds of roles that we know are needed, but previously have just been, you know,
having community members come in and giving them maybe a gift card or a small stipend to participate. How do we turn that kind of lived experience and knowledge that people have into career level work in planning? I think that we're all looking at that federal funding that's coming down, and you all are here to help us start putting things in order and really defining what it's going to look like to work with communities. So I'm just really excited. And I had a really weird thing happen yesterday. I'm just going to bring this up because it was something that came up on our one of the equity listening sessions that a number of the commissioners and folks at Caltrans and CalSTA had been part of, thanks to the work of our organizers. There was a listening session with folks in the Inland Empire a few months ago. And there was someone on the call who ended up being a little disruptive. I think she was, she was having a good time in a way that isn't usual shouldn't be usual in a public meeting space. But she mentioned this problem of how freight impacts were coming down in Inland Empire neighborhoods where you have delivery drivers who don't have access to a restroom. Speaking of bathroom access, right? And, she was talking about these water bottles full of urine. You know what I found in my yard yesterday? And I don't live in the IE. I live, like I said, transit accessible over an old streetcar suburb in South LA. And, it came home to me, like, we got to figure out some of these issues, these systems that are changing so fast right under our feet, how all these things connect up, logistics, commuting, jobs, where people can live. Was it urine in that bottle? I don't know. I didn't test it. I didn't have any way to really determine it. I just made an assumption there. But anyway, I just wanted to share because it reminded me of that listening session. But thank you all for making the time to be here. And those of you who traveled, especially, thank you so much for coming into the space, and looking forward to working with you.
Good morning, Martha Armas Kelly, and I reside in Merced, California. I represent Catholic Charities Environmental Justice program, but more so I represent the Central Valley. I want to first give land acknowledgement to the Native Indigenous people of this region, which are the Chumash, the Gabrielino, the Tongva, the Kitse, the Venturians, and the San Fernandians. I come from the Miwok and Yokuts lands, and I am very honored to be in this space amongst all of you. This is quite, I get emotional because spiritually, I'm fed to see the different diverse faces here, to understand that these experiences that you all speak about are going to be manifested here in the decisions that we make, in the spaces that we share, and the respect that we have for each other. I am going to be the heart. I will let you know that I will, you said, hold you to it. I will hold you to it because I reside in a community that is heavily impacted by your decisions. And I cannot be here without remembering their faces. Just recently, Planada, California, I sit on the board for Planada in Action, and we set up command posts. People lost houses, infrastructure, way of living, quality of life, and they're still suffering because of this. There has to be solutions that we make here that will impact people for a better systemic change. The outcome that comes from these sessions weighs heavy on my heart, and I do not take my role lightly. I was praying as I was listening to all of you, and I was thinking, please let me have one thing that I could say, because you've pretty much covered so many different areas. But I can say that I am the heart, and I come with my ancestors. I come with the people, the voices. Vengo con las voces de toda la comunidad. Yo soy la voz. Najong. I come with the Southeast Asian people that come and work in the fields with me. I come with those voices. And I share those spaces with you. I've been a fellow with UC Berkeley as the Leader in Residence program in transportation. This is my project that I'm working on and bringing a vision and a photo voice to what we are doing here today. And I hope to be able to use this so we feed more people with knowledge and understanding of the depth and the dynamics of what we do. It is not enough to sit here and make a decision, but to be mindful of those decisions and carry that knowledge with you wherever you go and share it. I during the COVID crisis, the beginning, I became a fellow with UC Davis in working with the environmental justice program. Before that, I was a partner in advancing climate equity through the Strategic Growth Council. Never took any of those roles lightly, because each time that I was in those sessions, I learned so much more about what we are and who we are in this state. We are pioneers. This room is not a coincidence. It's an active decision and change in a role that we each carry. We've lived those experiences, and now we are here representing all those people. And I encourage you. I could tell you a lot about what I've done and who I am, but it'll come. You'll hear me, and I will voice my opinion. I'm just overwhelmed right now. I can't even speak because it's just so much energy and excitement and just being in this space with you all. But I will say this: when we are here, I could just feel the energy, and I wish that you that are on Zoom could feel the energy. The vibration is on such a high frequency because there's so much excitement and so much movement and so much energy of each one of you. And I can't wait to work with all of you. I'm honored in your space. Thank you.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm going to continue the Central Valley love here. My name is Christine Williams. I'm from Stockton, California, and I work for a national nonprofit organization, Enterprise Community Partners. We're focused on all things affordable housing. If you're familiar with Stockton, you know that we're bounded on our east and west sides by I-5 and Highway 99. We have the Crosstown Freeway that runs through what was once the largest Filipino community outside of the Philippines, Little Manila. And it also currently serves and bisects the South Stockton neighborhood from the rest of the city. So I kind of bring that legacy here, right? And while housing is my background, and I'm sure everyone's heard how fundamental housing is to quality of life, to opportunity, but so is that connectivity that is facilitated by the variety of transportation options a neighborhood hopefully has, right? And so my hope is really around one, integration, that when we think about how we are planning and delivering these investments, we are cognizant of the broader land use impacts that those investments have. Also being in Stockton, I'm quite familiar with the super commute, right? And so I was also born in Riverside, so I have a lot of love for inland California, but also understand sort of the lack of, well, I don't want to say lack of planning, sometimes intentional planning that went into keeping a lot of our inland communities outside of major employment sectors. So being intentional about our investments and also keeping a climate resiliency lens front and center, again, when we are thinking about planning and delivering transportation projects. So honored to share the dais with all of you and looking forward to working together. Thank you.
So I know I introduced myself before, but I forgot to say I'm part of the Central Valley connection here. I'm from Fresno. In between, I think there are three communities here. We have the highest unemployment, highest poverty in the entire country. We always talk about the state of California, which I have to tell you, I'll go to my death saying California is the best place on earth to live, to work, to raise your families. But it's not a one size fits all. And we know that. And we know we have to do things differently. Fresno County in itself has 6,000 square miles, and the majority of it is rural, and transportation is impossible to get from our rural cities into the major urban areas. Myself, my previous life in the 80s and 90s, I know I'm dating myself now. I ran the Rape Crisis Center in Fresno County. I helped then Senator Biden write the Violence Against Women Act, the first one. We got it passed, and worked really hard to get the state to come together to talk about what's being left behind, what happens in our state when we're talking about equity, we're talking about women's rights. And I saw what happened in the 80s and 90s and what you can do together. If you all come together with that one goal, the changes that you can make. We started the first California Coalition Against Sexual Assault. They used to call me one of the founding mothers. I think now they call me a founding grandmother, I'm pretty sure. But we did start that in the state of California. And now the changes that were made over those last 30, 40 years is absolutely amazing and outstanding. You weren't able to use the word rape before, the people would say, oh, don't say that word when you come together. And now people have rights and now people work together. So the work that you all are doing, I can see what we can do together. I've seen what happens when people have that passion and say, there's all these roadblocks, but by God, we can get past it. So I'm just thrilled to be here, to be around the amazing group of people that are here. So thank you.
I'm Mitch Weiss, Executive Director of the Commission. I too am very happy to be here. It's about 3 years since we at the Commission started talking about forming this committee. And so it's very exciting. It's a very important milestone. But if this is as far as we get, we've accomplished nothing. And so it's really going to be, how do we take what we learned from you all and translate that into providing transportation for people, and particularly the underserved people of California. And so I look forward to, seeing how we start dealing with that in the planning and the funding of projects, but then in the bigger picture, in articulating the vision for the people of California. Thank you for helping us.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Naila Pope Hardin. I am the executive director of an organization called Climate Plan. I'm based in Sacramento, but it's a statewide organization that brings together about 60 different climate, equity, housing, transportation organizations to try and create and advocate for the most holistic policy to help Californians thrive. As someone who sits at many of the intersections of marginalized groups, and as a member of many marginalized groups, this equity work is vital. And I want to stress that equity work is not just equity work, but it is justice work. Leaving here, I left my 2-year-old son with my parents. And when I'm talking about what I was doing, my father sees this as justice because he's a Southern man who grew up in Louisiana, Northern Louisiana, born in the 50s. So this is justice work. For me, I see what we do here, if we're able to do it right, as liberation work. I've been a community organizer all of my life. I wonder if equity was a thing, what I would be doing otherwise. I've devoted most of my life to equity, but I don't want that for my son, right? So we have to get it right here. We have to liberate me. While this meeting is great, we could be doing so much more with our time if we just get it right. And so not only do we have to get it right in this, we can't draw it out either. Let's just get it done. Let's just do it. So then 2 years from now, we can be talking about, I joke and say all the time, like, I want to talk about transportation for the rest of my life, but I want to argue about what color bike lanes, what kind of paint we're using. I don't want to argue about whether communities deserve to have access to jobs and housing. That to me is ridiculous. There's so much more that we could be doing here, and so much more that's possible if we just get what we do at this committee right. And I'm really excited about being here and pushing and getting on everyone's nerves if that's what has to be. But I so deeply believe in coalition work. Again, as someone who comes from a bunch of marginalized populations, every right has been afforded to me by coalitions coming together and advocating for folks like me. And so I truly believe in the power of what we can do here, and I'm super excited and happy to be here with everyone. Thank you.
Peggy Martinez here. Can you hear me?
Hello? Okay, great.
Yes, we can hear you, Peggy. Okay, I just wanted to, I'll just introduce myself then. Hi, everyone. I'm Peggy Martinez. I live in Arcata, California. Arcata is on the north coast of the state. It's just south of the border between California and Oregon. We have a very sort of population-wise, a very small county, the county of Humboldt. In this county, though, we've got 2 colleges. We have a very vibrant community, tourism community, and we like many rural communities in the state need, better transportation. I myself am I have a significant sight impairment. I have very low vision. I was born and sort of raised down in Southern California in Orange County. And at that time, the bus system was in its infancy. The Orange County Transit District, it was called at that time. So, I lived in large sub with way of either or bicycling. I had a tandem bike. Parts of the state. I lived in the Bay Area where the transportation is really good. Lived in Ventura where the transportation isn't so great. And I'm on this, well, I have been an advocate and a disability inclusion professional. I've done both all for many years. I believe that an equitable transportation system is going to provide a way for people to be employed. And right now, I'm specifically thinking of people with disabilities, but people who don't drive, people who have all kinds of different needs and different concerns and whatnot. An equitable and robust transportation system is going to provide to efficient to school, work, to recreate, whatever path that they wish to get to, and that those kinds of opportunities are, they create a meaningful life for people. And when folks don't have that transportation, things can feel a little bit bleak. So I am thrilled to be on this committee. I hope to meet you all at the next meeting. I was really looking forward to coming down for this one, but I wasn't able to for a few reasons. And I have no idea whether you can see me right now. If my video, if that is all working and all of the rest, but hopefully you can hear me. And I've enjoyed what so many of you have said. This right, we will be able to have other much more interesting discussions about the variety and the successes of the transportation system. So my goal with this committee is to assert how I believe transit and walkability and safety, pedestrian safety, and all of that, safe biking, and all of it can work for as many people as possible. And to be as solutions oriented and to be to work with you all to make California have a better transit system. And I agree with the woman that said that she thinks California is the best place to live. I absolutely do. And I'm thrilled to live here and to be on this committee. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Peggy. I'm going to turn it back over to this back row to continue introductions, and then we'll switch back over to the folks that we have online.
Thank you. Joe Liu, Commissioner with California Transportation Commission. Him live in the wonderful city of Hawthorne, California, down the road here. on unceded Tonga land, which ironically is called the City of Good Neighbors. But in addition to being a commissioner, I am an environmental justice advocate. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I have been doing environmental justice work for 33 years. Somehow I've become a senior person in the fight for environmental justice in California, and started at a time when people really didn't know what you were talking about when you told them we had environmental justice issues that needed to be addressed. And I spent my time helping impacted community members advance the goals and principles of environmental justice and policy decisions, both locally and regionally here at the South Coast Air Quality Management District and at Cal EPA and the Air Resources Board. So this in some ways is like a deja vu for me a little bit, but it's also like an opportunity to bring my decades of experience in environmental justice to this effort. And you did ask, Carolyn, about our hopes and vision for this. And my hope and vision is nothing short than transportation equity. I think we need to prevent future problems. We need to achieve transportation equity. We need to address past grievances and past problems that we've created. But I bring to that the knowledge and experience that has shown me that it's really easy to make promises and really easy to get people to promise things. But it's very, very difficult to get them to implement them and to implement them properly. So I'm hoping that this group that we have fought very hard to create, and we are so glad that now exists, this group will help us and guide us on the policy decisions, but will also hold us accountable, all of us, for making sure that we implement them fully and completely. And we get to that place of transportation equity. And it's not going to be easy. We all recognize that, but that's where we need to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Randy Torres Van Vleck, pronouns he, him, or they, them, and it's a pleasure to be here this afternoon. I grew up in the San Diego area of Southern California on traditional Kumeyaay land. I live in City Heights, and I work for the City Heights Community Development Corporation, a place-based organization that was founded 41 years ago. And the reason why City Heights CDC was formed was because the State Route 15 freeway was being planned through the middle of City Heights, and our organization formed in response to that to make sure that the project would not divide the community in half. So we undertook a multi-generational effort to ensure that, and worked to come up with a community vision and to get Caltrans to implement that. And the community came up with a plan called the Visions Project for 8 blocks. That turned into 5 blocks, and that turned into 3, and then 1 of cover, freeway cover. And it was hard to get all those amenities to show up. The community had to organize, advocate for many years and decades for that. The freeway opened in 2001 for cars, and 17 years later, in 2018, the Centerline transit stations opened up, and it took a lot of work to get those open. So we also were able to secure the first freeway cover park in California. And so, there's a lot of lessons that were learned from that effort. I hope to bring some of those forward and learn from you all as well. But throughout that work, City Heights really built a lot of power to influence processes. And today it's a beautiful community with bold leadership. It's led the way for, in San Diego, the Youth Opportunity Pass program, which just launched last year. Tremendously successful program for free transit for youth 18 and under. Now it's going to be expanded to 24 and under. Hope to have your support on that. Stepping back a little bit, adding a little bit more personally about myself. I grew up in Southwest Chula Vista, which is part of the southwestern portion of San Diego. So I actually live closer to downtown Tijuana than downtown San Diego. And so transborder mobility is a big part of our community, our needs, how our region gets around. So I hope to bring that perspective forward. I think a lot about housing, affordable housing, reducing economic barriers to transit, transportation justice, meaningful community engagement, participatory planning. And I was really inspired by DOT Secretary Anthony Fox, former secretary, whose vision for the ladders of opportunity, the framework was recognizing the wrongs of the past, ensuring that we're not replicating them, and then correcting them correcting them moving forward. And that's a framework I've tried to bring forward to the work. And I hope that I can bring that forward here and work with you all to achieve that. Thank you.
That's on. Okay, great. Darnell Grisby, Commissioner of the CTC, appointed back in 2021 by the governor. It's quite something for me to be in this room at the moment because I grew up in Southern California, even though I live in San Francisco now. I grew up in the 1990s, and this room was very active when it came to planning the future of the region. And I followed their movements religiously as a high school and college student because I personally lived the story of what a transportation system can do to one's family and to oneself. Growing up during that period of time, we walked out of our door and we would just have our eyes tear up from the smog. We couldn't have PE outside because of the pollution. And those sort of experiences really shaped me. And it's an honor to be with all of you today and to hear your stories and to keep the work that the commission does real and tied to those realities. And it's true that a transportation system can either make or break a community. It can either lead to upward mobility or keep you stuck. And we've seen too much of the stuck for too long in the state for too many people. And it's time to make the transportation system work for more people so that the next generation can see that our investments today led to their liberation. And that's why we're here. So it's a pleasure to be here. And I look forward to the stories and the learnings that we all share. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Grisby. So that we don't throw you on the spot right as you walk in, I'm going to turn it over to Tanisha to introduce herself. And then just for your benefit, we are doing introductions, name, geographic region that you represent, and then either your professional or organizational affiliation. One thing, just food for thought, we're sharing what our hope or our vision is for the EAC. But Tanisha, I'll turn it to you.
Thank you, Carolyn. My name's Tanisha Taylor. I am the Chief Deputy Director of the California Transportation Commission. I am so pleased, so excited about this moment. My parents grew up in the 50s and 60s. So like Commissioner Grisby, like many people have spoken, the issues we talk about in this committee, the issues we talk about in the world are very, very homegrown issues for me. They are very personal. My mother, when I grew up, was active in unionizing her hospital and speaking up for people who don't have voices. And so it's very, very important to me that we're here today. It's very important to see all of you because just a personal story, my mother is a quadriplegic. And so traveling the transportation system that we make decisions about, I look at it very differently through that lens on how big is the door that we have to go through, how many handicap accessible parking spaces are there that have access for ramps that come out of vans. Because all of those things mean the difference from us leaving our door to getting through the door to see the doctor for her care. I also think about my father as we go through this, who lived in Harlem before Harlem gentrified, who didn't believe the system reflected his voice and didn't vote until he was 60 years old. Those things are very important. Those are generational things. Those are the things that I learned growing up about how to articulate and speak for my voice, and to make sure that this agency, the commission, also speaks with our voice for those people whose voices are not in the room, but are equally as important as those voices that are in the room. And so I'm just so excited to be here. I thank you all for giving your time. I know how valuable your time is. I know how valuable this space is. And I know how important it is to instilling hope in people who didn't have hope in the system. And I, like the committee members, we have to get it right. We have to get it right because at the end of what we do are people and the implications to people. But that's just me. So thank you for that opportunity. I'll turn it to William.
I'll have to do that. Thank you so much. And I truly am apologetic for my tardiness. I look forward to looking at the video. I'm thankful for the Zoom world that's one piece is that we can always go back and look at the record. I'm extremely stressed out by the fact that I arrived late to this room because I used to work here. So if you could imagine coming into a building that, like, if you were late, you were basically fired. And I lucked out. My boss probably could have fired me a few times, and but she hung in there, and I get to sit next to you for the first time. I used to take your non-voting votes when I was in the board office. So it's funny to be sitting right next to you, and great to see you after very many years. My name is William Walker, and it's funny that you ask about affiliations. When I applied to be on this committee, I might have been working for the city of San Francisco as like an auditor in training rather. And by the time that I was appointed to this position, I think I was a budget analyst for Muni, but as it stands right now, I'm a grad student. I go to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and I am studying city and regional planning. Surprise. I also am a high school substitute teacher in the Bay Area, since I like to live life a little extended over regions, I guess. And I live in San Francisco. I've lived and taken transit both in this region and in the Bay Area for more than 40 years. So, like, even though I don't live in Los Angeles, I knew that I could take the 40 here from where I'm staying tonight, and it's the same 40 that used to run when, I mean, there's no rapid 40 anymore. But what I will say is my mom also has a disability. She's had the mobility issues since I can remember. And what was really important to me growing up was that there was transit for us to use. She had a car and she was able to drive a car until that car didn't work. And her grandmother moved from New Jersey when she was too ill to take care of herself to the East Bay, where my mom's aunts lived. And we took transit to visit my great grandmother. And I just remember paying 3 transit fares and taking 2 hours to get from, sometimes it took an hour and 10 minutes, but that was rare. It generally took 2 hours to get from the Glen Park area in San Francisco, where my mom still lives after 40 years, to near Hilltop Mall in Richmond. And it was 3 trips. And eventually you learn to just walk to and from BART. But the walk from Hilltop Mall to BART, if you've ever done that, was like an hour, like if not longer. And like I said, my mom's disabled. So what's really important to me for this body, and as it stands now, I go to school 200 miles south of where I live because it's free. Thank you, Cal State University system. And but there's no regular train, like I'm driving to school because we have a train corridor there that doesn't run enough service for me to actually go there on transit like I'd like to. And like a lot of people who do that trek between SLO and the 2 urban areas where we end up having to get jobs because you can't all be planners in SLO. So I hope to see a transportation system that is, free for those who need it to be free. I know that the free transit debate, especially with issues around folks feeling that transit isn't safe or so-called not safe. And I know that there are some issues on our systems, but like if we invest in the system in the manner that it should be invested in, and if we use the system and if we make it so that everyone can use the system, I went 30 years without a car, and they're probably some of the best times of my life, and like kept me healthy. If you're running for a bus or at least walking briskly to a bus, you're going to be in shape. Like I learned when I started driving. So those are the things that are, and the system that is equitable for everyone who relies on it in an equal manner. So that if I remember living east of here, and the bus where I lived in Montebello was like every 60 minutes, but like if I were west of every 30 minutes. If I were west of East LA College, it was running like every 8 minutes. And so that's why I had that fear about being late coming into this building, because the same bus line had 2 different headways, and that's not an equitable system. And we shouldn't have to even look at a bus schedule to ride it. So those are among many other things. I'm probably taking up too much time. I apologize, but I'm really happy to be here. And I look forward to working with you all and hearing your stories. Thank you.
Thank you, William. Commissioner Norton, you wanted to share something else.
I did want to say, in this room, I feel like there's no such thing as talking too long. If you're talking from the heart, let's keep that as a really big mantra. So welcome. I did want to add that I'm a commissioner that was appointed by Governor Newsom in 2019 and 2023. And in this room, one of the people I miss is Commissioner Bob Alvarado, who one of the projects that we've all worked on together as part of the Equity Roundtable was that he moved a motion, and Mark, thank you for doing this with the governor's budget, but $1 billion in new active transportation money was in the budget last year and went out and is in projects. And that was all because of the Equity Roundtable and talking about the fact that there's not enough money. So we are already standing one step taller together, doing something that has more active transportation that year than a lot of entire states' budget, and in some ways the nation. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So we also have several committee members that are joining us virtually. So I want to change over to our virtual participants to introduce themselves. I'm going to tee a few of you up so that we can go in order. Anna Gonzalez, we'll start with you, followed by Amber and then Herb, and then I'll circle back to the rest of the individuals. So Anna, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Yes, hi. Good afternoon, everyone. I actually just landed in DC, so I couldn't be there in person with you all, advocating on the federal side as well. Again, my name is Anna Gonzalez. I'm the Executive Director for the Center for Community Action and Environmental Justice, and we serve the Inland Empire communities of San Bernardino and Riverside counties. We are sitting on Tongva land, so I want to acknowledge that. And I am really excited to be a part of this committee, especially given all the issues that we have been dealing with in the Inland Empire as far as truck traffic and our roads deteriorating, especially our major highways. So I'm looking to find solutions through this committee and see what we can do to improve our public transportation access for our community members, because sometimes we think about widening roads is the best option to alleviate traffic, but that's a backfiring way to bring like a false solution, because you just add more trucks, more cars on the road. And the point of it all is to reduce the emissions that our community members have to inhale on a daily basis. Right now, the Inland Empire is getting over 700,000 trucks a day. And these are diesel, trucks that are emitting this soot pollution that is causing major harm to our children, especially, but overall, all of our communities. So I'm looking forward to participating, collaborating, and finding solutions, because we desperately need them. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank
Hi,
you, Anna.
everybody.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Amber. I'm sorry.
Okay, it's okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Amber Novi, and I work for LIUNA, the laborers union. If everyone's not familiar with our very large acronym LIUNA, I represent California, Hawaii, Arizona, and New Mexico, but I mostly work in the lovely state of California, and I'm based in Sacramento, California. And I represent the men and women that build the infrastructure in California, whether it's underground infrastructure for subway systems or the highways, the roadways, the bridges. All of us that utilize the infrastructure system in California, those are our workers, and we want to keep them safe with whatever we build. Work zone safety is a key priority. Earning a livable wage while building everything is a key priority for us as a labor union. And I'm honored to work with all of you, and I'm looking forward to building relationships with all of you and working together for the common good of the people of California, and making sure that everybody has an equitable way of getting around our beautiful state of California.
Okay, I guess I'll start. My name is Herb Hastings. I'm going to say, first of all, thank you for this opportunity. And with a minor reputation I do have, I apologize if I get on your nerves. But to start friendly and nicely, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. I am the consumer advocate for the agency called nonprofit agency called Regional Center to East Bay, which with the funds from through the Developmental Disabilities Council and DDS, the health department, I represent several thousand individuals that live in the East Bay area that have intellectual disabilities, developmental disabilities. And I've been a active transit advocate for at least the last 20 years. And I do different agency advisory committees. I serve on several different ones that assist individuals with disabilities. And currently I'm chair for 2 of them. I'm also a member of a council that assists individuals with developmental disabilities. My transit expertise is I am on the Alameda County Transit Commission's Independent Watchdog Committee. I'm on their Paratransit Advisory Committee. So I work with the County Commission. And I'm also on the BART Accessibility Advisory Committee, the Bay Area Rapid Transit Advisory Committee. And I'm also a chairman of that committee. And I don't know how I got picked on this, but maybe I was too qualified. And you can also see, if you see my video, I'm a very serious diehard baseball fan of the Oakland A's. And I'm looking forward to working with Sequoia and the staff and the rest of the committee in person in the future. So thank you again for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Herb. So next I'd like to have Stella introduce yourself and then Mike Despain.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the time to introduce myself, but thank you to the members of the commission and to my fellow advisory committee members. I just loved hearing all of your stories and the reason why you work so hard for equitable transportation. Really, really good stories. And so I'm a Long Beach resident. I am also the Senior Programs and Partnerships Manager for Grid Alternatives, the Greater LA office. Our organization has focused on connecting families that live in under-resourced communities to solar energy systems, to lower energy bills, and to workforce development opportunities. And so my job is basically to get out there and engage folks, engage communities, nonprofits, cities, and any potential partners that might be interested in working with us on these types of projects. I think I'm going to keep it very short. My vision that through this work, that there are thousands of workforce opportunities for community members that live in these same communities that are most impacted and most marginalized by pollution, by greenhouse gas emissions, but by not having equitable transportation modes. And so that's something that I have committed my past 20 years to. And I'm really excited to be working with the Equity Advisory Committee and with the commissioners, and look forward to getting some solid work done here. Thank you so much.
Michael, if you're unmuted, feel free to introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Despain. I'm the Chief Operations Officer, Natural Resource Director, and Fire Chief for the Buena Vista Rancheria of Miwok Indians, located in Sacramento and Amador counties. I appreciate the opportunity to be part of this organization and assist the state supporting all 109 federally recognized tribes and the unrecognized state tribes with the transportation issues in and off reservations, regardless of rural or city populous areas. If there's any questions or comments or anything on the tribal side, please do not hesitate to ask. I've got open doors with all the tribes in reference to accessibility on tribal lands, and they're very, very interested at the same time and on how we move forward with this process. Short and sweet. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Are there any committee members online that we overlooked? I believe we have everyone. So in addition to the committee members that we have online, we also have our Chief Deputy Director, Mike Keever, joining us virtually. Mike, if you'd like to introduce yourself. Give us 1 second, Mike.
Thank you. Mike Kiefer, Deputy Director here at Caltrans, and certainly a pleasure to join all of you and to hear, all of the, the impacts that come from transportation, the opportunities we have, and working together with, the tremendous investments that are being made. And has been mentioned several times already, focusing on people and focusing on all people, particularly the people that we often don't hear. The commission and Director Tavares, myself, we participated in equity listening sessions. And I will say the more we stop and listen, I think the more our eyes continue to be open and seeing the opportunities. And I really sincerely look forward to working with you and hearing from you and working together to do and make the best positive difference we can for the people of California that we serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. So in addition to the folks joining us online, I also want to ask any of our agency staff members that are here in person, particularly in the chamber, to stand up just so that we can acknowledge that you are participating in our inaugural convening. Perfect. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'll hand it back to Sequoia at this point.
Great. Thanks, everyone. I'm feeling very inspired and moved to tears several times. So thank you. We are going to take a quick break. We are a little bit ahead of schedule, so we can take more than a 5-minute break, which is what it was going to be anyways. But why don't we take a break? It's now 2:20 and we can reconvene around 2:35. So a 15-minute break. Restrooms are out that way. There's a cafe with water, and thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Oh, 2:30. Okay, wait. I'm looking. I woke up way too early. Nearby? There was a cafeteria and like 2 sort of. I'm still having an afternoon today. And the rain on top of it. Yeah. I say go. Hey, how are you? Good. Nice to meet you. I thought we did. Have you? San Jose. Oh, oh, geez. Okay, yeah. Oh, okay. Nice to meet you. Look forward to working with you. Thanks for being here. Hey, let's see. Say hi to our.
Okay, seems like we've reached critical mass. I will go ahead and get started. Thanks for coming back. We will now move on to our first policy item officially of the Equity Advisory Committee, where we will be having a discussion and hearing an expert from our state about setting the stage for transportation equity initiatives. The goal of this item is to ground us all in the importance of the work of this committee. And please use the information conveyed here when thinking about our priority focus areas for next year and beyond. We are grateful to have Tamika Butler here with us today to speak to us about the importance of transportation equity work in California. Tamika Butler, pronouns she, her, or they, them, is a doctoral student in urban planning at UCLA's Luskin School of Public Affairs. Tamika's research employs a critical race, historical, legal, and policy-based approach to examine how transportation policy and infrastructure have been used to segregate, isolate, and prevent the mobility of Black and other historically oppressed groups of people. Prior to pursuing her PhD, Tamika consulted, wrote, and spoke as a national expert on issues related to public policy, the built environment, equity, anti-racism, diversity and inclusion, organizational behavior, and change management. She transitioned to policy work after litigating for 3 years as an employment lawyer at Legal Aid Society Employment Law Center. Tamika has a diverse background in law, community organizing, and nonprofit leadership. With that, I will pass it to Tamika. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Great to see so many friends and former colleagues and current colleagues or current professors. Professor Lugo, I got my final in last night. And so really excited to be here. I am not gonna talk for too long because we want to leave as much time for Q&A as possible. But as somebody who had a very brief stint on the CTC and a bit of a longer stint with the Equity Roundtable as we were trying to figure out what would ultimately come from it. It's really gratifying to see this space come together, to see so many people who I respect and admire. And in just a short time, under Mitch's leadership, Tanisha's leadership, and Sequoia and the whole team, the conversation around equity and transportation has gone really quickly. But I think for a lot of us who have been advocates, probably not quickly enough because we've been working on it for a long time. And so I was asked to talk a little bit about why this work is important. And in some ways it feels a little bit like preaching to the choir, because if you're here, I hope that you have an understanding of why this work is important and why it matters, and why it matters that you give all of yourself to it. And, for folks who have heard me speak before, you've probably heard the example I always use about my family, that, I'm very proudly Black. My wife is not. She's very white. And when we decided to have kids, we really had a lot of tough conversations about what it would mean to raise Black kids in this country. And my wife, who's very smart, I think intellectually understood what that meant. And I do not think it was until we had 2 kids, and in particularly just in the last year when we had a 4-year-old Black boy who is tall and who many people think is 5 or 6, and who was running into a lot of trouble at school. As some folks know, me coming was a little touch and go because of the LAUSD strike. My son just started at an LAUSD school because he was politely asked to leave his preschool. And I think everything that led up to that was my wife having to be like, oh, this is what it is, right? And I think the awakening of that for her beyond that intellectual level, on the feeling level, there's a concept that some Indigenous folks talk about of felt knowledge, right? And I think for all of us who are part of communities who have been oppressed, we know what felt knowledge is. We feel that knowledge, but sometimes other folks think that knowledge is only something that can be gained from books, or from committees, or from reports, or from research, right? And this was the first time my wife had to feel it and to gain that knowledge of what it is to raise a Black man in this country, and to understand that this isn't a conversation we can save for a later date, that our 4-year-old is coming home saying, I'm a bad kid. They don't want me at school. Or me and my friend, the other Black kid, had to go play by ourselves today, right? And when you talk to the teachers, all folks of color, there's a conversation about, oh, well, those two just have a different energy. Those two they really need to get out all of that, right? And so for me, part of why I felt comfortable getting to this place with my wife, and if you ask any of my friends, I have a little collective, we call ourselves the Biscuit Society because we like biscuits, and it's all women of color from different backgrounds. And if you ask them, they were probably surprised I ended up getting married, because I had a lot of conversations before, like, oh my God, Kelly's this and she's this and she's this and she's wonderful, but she's white. And I don't know if I could really do this. I mean, I love this person, but she's like really white. She's Canadian. Like, this is like some other level French Canadian. And like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Right. And one of the things that really made us kind of solidify where we were is when we started talking about kids' names. And again, some folks have heard me share this before, right? Both of my parents were raised in Omaha, Nebraska, a place that many people think is very white. It's not. I mean, it is, but it also has Black people there. And, you know, we've both grown up to marry white partners. And my grandmother just passed away a few weeks ago. And I remember talking to her at one Thanksgiving, and my grandmother, you know, was born and raised in segregated South Carolina. And I said, Grandma, does this surprise you or does it upset you that all of your grandkids, because she has some other grandkids and they married white folks too. And I was like, does it bother you that like a lot of us have married white folks? And she said, Mika, stop asking me these stupid questions. What do you think happens when you move to a place like Nebraska? And so, you know, she has these grandkids, and my sister, who's named Tanisha, is named Tanisha, and now lives in a small Iowa town with her farmer husband, and is just like mind blown. And she has a kid, and, you know, it's me, Tamika. And so clearly when our parents gave us our names, we were given names with the thought that people will know you are Black. They will know you are Black when you are coming. Now, my wife, her name is Kelly, and her sister's name is Robin. And they were named at a time in the 80s when Kelly and Robin were fairly unisex names. And they're, you know, French Canadian parents who coincidentally met in planning school in Toronto. They decided on these names because they didn't want them to be discriminated against for being women. They wanted to give them all the opportunities they could in life. And so they made a very conscious name. And in fact, my mother-in-law named my sister-in-law Danielle for many months before she was overcome with guilt that she had given Kelly a better chance than Danielle and changed her name to Robin, which was very complicated legally. And so we were coming from these two like very different naming conventions. And when it was time to name our kids, I remember sitting on my in-laws' couch in Phoenix, Arizona, And my mother-in-law being like, what about this name? And I was like, too white. What about this name? Too white. And she's like, I know a Black Thomas. And I was just like, Diane, like, we're just going for different things. And ultimately, you know, we named our kids Atay and Kaima, and we found a way to make these names mean a lot to both of us. My wife's family is French Canadian by way of Lithuania, which they escaped during the Holocaust. And so both names are Lithuanian. Atay meaning future, Kaima meaning village or community. And so they meant a lot to my wife. And of course, Black folks are like, you made that up? And I'm like, yeah, girl, yeah. And so we have these two kids, and I said to Kelly, if we're gonna do this, if we're gonna get married, if we're gonna have kids, we're gonna raise them as Black. And we had all these discussions about like, yeah, but you know, they're gonna be biracial. We should raise them to be biracial. And I'm just like, okay, but the world's gonna see them as Black. And so as a Black parent, like, I can't, like, I want them to believe that they can be anything. I want them to leave in the morning with mismatched socks and shoes and things that my parents would have never let me do. But now I understand why. Because if I go out in the world and I don't look right, then people are going to think certain things that they wouldn't think of the quirky white kid who has two different socks on, right? And I have to walk this fine line of letting my kids be themselves, but also wanting to protect them. And where we ended up falling is that we would let them be creative and do all the things. It's really hard for me sometimes. And we would also raise them to know that they were Black and know what that meant. And what that meant for my wife is that she had to get ready to parent Black kids. And so now we have this bookshelf of books that's like Black hair, white care. She knows a lot more about lotion than she ever knew in the past, and her skin thanks her. And there are so many things that she just had to figure out, right? But again, all of these things were things she could intellectually figure out. She could buy a book, she could study, and she could get really good at them. And she has, and she did. And then our kid hit this age where all of a sudden he became a problem child. And everything she read in books, every blog she tried to find about parenting, she couldn't find anything that spoke to how she was feeling deeply wronged. Like our son just wasn't getting a fair shake. Like people just weren't giving him a chance, right? And so I share this bit about felt knowledge and my family. And for many folks, you're like, well, what does this have to do with transportation? And I share this because too often when we are doing equity work, we expect that in professional settings, we should leave that work to the diverse folks, right? But anybody who has co-parented or has been part of a child's life knows that that doesn't work. This whole like do it by yourself doesn't really pan out. And if I came here today and said to anyone, when my wife and I had Black kids, she said, dope. I'll holler at you in about 18, 20 years. You got it from here, right? I'm not Black. I don't know what to do. If she said, oh man, our kid's getting kicked out of school, and I think it might be about race, but you should go talk to his teacher by yourself because I'm not Black and I don't know. Most people would be like, yo, you got to leave her. She is not about it. But for whatever reason, in professional settings, there are so many people who say, well, I don't have a disability. Well, I'm not a woman. Well, I'm not Indigenous. I'm not Black. And so you somehow think you're doing the right thing by taking a step back and by letting those people lead that work. But just like that would lead to a horrible marriage full of resentment and anger, it's the same for those of us who work in these professional spaces. When we are left to do this work on our own, It's just not enough. And that's why when you have folks who aren't part of these groups, one of my favorite people is Jeannie, because Jeannie's been about it and she always speaks up and she always has our back, right? And not because she knows inherently what it's like to be Black, but she's going to make sure not just that she's at the table speaking for us, but that I get a seat at the table, right? And so as you approach this work as an interagency group, maybe you're smarter than me and you made a decision not to have kids and not to get married because, I always tell people the pandemic's not over, but if I wasn't married and I didn't have kids, I'd be out in these streets. But no matter where you are in your personal life, in your professional life, what I hope you do in this space is realize that this isn't work for certain groups of people who fit certain demographics or who check certain boxes or who have certain words in their job title. This is work for all of us, right? And I am not from California, as I said, so I've always really disliked that California exceptionalism about like, if it happens here, it can happen anywhere. But I do feel like we are in a state where there are some exciting things happening. We are talking about reparations. We are talking about the fact that you cannot fix transportation without talking about climate, without talking about housing affordability, right? We in LA County just had a report released called We're Still Here, talking about Indigenous folks on this land and thinking about creative ways when we think about climate justice, that there are folks who already have the knowledge. This is a state where I am not worried about the fact that I am at a public university and someone is going to stop me from talking about critical race theory. I am not in a state where I have to worry about my 4-year-old boy who sometimes just wants to be Elsa and wears dresses to school, feeling like he is somehow different and doesn't belong. And so while I don't like the California exceptionalism, I hope we all embrace it. And I hope we realize that we are in a world that is getting increasingly at odds, right? I've been saying to people, we are in a world where we are having conversations without civility, and it feels like we are careening closer to a civil war. But in this state, when you look around this table, I see the diversity, I see the hope that has been promised to so many people who come to this country and think this is what it's going to look like, right? And we have that here, and we have resources, and we have a budget. And you are working on what I think is the most important issue, because we can't talk about mobility economically. We can't talk about access to education or access to healthcare if we don't have transportation. And so transportation, as the former mayor of LA, new ambassador to India, barely, as he always used to say, transportation is the prism through which we should see all other social justice issues. And we can't talk about justice, we can't talk about equity if we're not talking about race, if we're not talking about power, and if we're not talking about privilege. I'll just end by saying one of our really great professors at UCLA, Ananya Roy, did a workshop for us a few weeks ago about professional development, because what else do students want before finals but to be told that they should be doing more? And Ananya is an awesome professor. That was not the point of it. It was ridiculously supportive. And I really admire the way she uses her academic platform to also make practical change. And the one question she left us all with, that I'll leave you all with, is how would we describe the work we do and what's at stake? And I would just ask, as you all form this community together, how are you going to describe the work you do? How will others describe it for years to come? And what's at stake? For me, it's my kids, right? That's what it all comes back to. I know what it's like to be forced out of kindergarten
I know what it's like to be told that the bathroom I think I should use is the wrong one and to be physically removed. I know what it's like to feel like I can't move through environments and be mobile and be free because of how I look, how I identify. I don't want my kids to experience that. And if they do, I want them to be equipped with the tools and the language and the pride and the courage of pushback. And so as you all go forth on this journey together, just think about how you want to describe this work and what's at stake, because I think it's a matter of life or death for so many of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamika. Powerful. We have some time for comments and questions from the executive committee. So if folks want to share in the room and online and have some time for dialogue, or if you have questions for Tamika too. Yeah, I'll let you facilitate. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Is there somebody who facilitates online? Like if there's a question? Okay,
got it. Thanks.
I just want to say that at 43 years old, I'm still that Black person that gets kicked out, things told that I don't belong at things. And it's amazing how that resonated. And I want for your kids to not experience what I continue to experience 40 years later.
Agreed. Thank you.
I just wanted to say beautiful, beautiful, eloquent, and very courageous. Just recently, I was in the cohort for UC Davis transportation, and we were sitting in a room and we were talking about transportation and what has been our experience with transportation in different areas, in different communities. And what was your best transportation? What was the most enjoyable experience in transportation? And one of the things that my partner, one of the cohort members, was mentioning is that transportation wasn't equitable for her. Her brother, they're twins, both same color skin, and one was a male, one was a female. Her roles are different, the way she enjoyed in life, and she was a cheerleader versus her brother that was just like to ride around on his bike. And in Davis, you would expect, because it's such a commuter type of community, like pro multimodal transportation, that even in that space, he experienced racism. And so his sister says when they were small, well, why don't you change the clothes that you're wearing? And they won't pick on you. So he says, that's a good idea. So he started dressing more professionally as he would ride his bike, and he still got stopped. And I listened to the story and I thought to myself, wow, I'm that parent that you're talking about, because I don't let my son ride his bike around in town because he's Black. And I don't want anyone to hurt my son. I see my son as my son. I don't see the imagery that others have for their children. And so it spoke to my heart, and it was so real to me, because I live that and my son lives that. And I don't even really know how it could happen that, I told him, well, I just want to ride my bike across town. And I said, it's not safe for you, mijo. I know you as Aiden. They might see you as someone else and they'll take you from me. That's real to me. So I share that pain and that hurt. It's important for us to have that in the forefront of how we deliver and how we think and how we communicate and how we make those decisions, because there is no separation. And I want you to know that there is no separation. We're talking about humanity and having access so that when you want to get a job, you don't have to worry about losing your job because you can't get from point A to point B in a good time where you don't get fired, where you're able to have those communications and not feel afraid that someone's going to cost you or hurt you when you get off the bus because there's not enough lighting, or there's a bathroom for a mother that needs to take her kids to the bathroom. So all those considerations are the things that we're looking at. And I'm so proud of you because there are people, so many people that I've met over the last 3 years that are doing so much work in these spaces. And it's no longer something that we're going to be quiet about. We cannot just do things on a checkbox and say equity and say, we did it, we used it. Tokenization is out. We're here to be deliberate and mindful. So thank you so much for what you said.
Thank you.
So Tamika, you know, I go to the Church of Tamika as regularly as I can. I enjoy hearing you speak often. And one of the things I appreciate is you talking about naming. Naila means one who succeeds, and it also translates to always reaching forward. And it's powerful to name things. And I think for all of us, it's a good reminder that it's not good enough to talk around it, right? Because that's what's easy. That's what we're conditioned to do, is talk around it. But sometimes we just need to name it. And how powerful that would be if we can all just name it, and give it a name and take power away from that name or give power to a name, depending on what we're talking about. And so I just appreciate your time, your heart, and your mind and all this. Thank you.
Thank you. And I totally agree. I always tell people, if you can't even talk about it, like if you can't name it, you can't fix it. If you can't say race, I can't trust you because it's there. We can't ignore it. So I think you're absolutely right.
Sorry, it took me a second there. Thank you so much for coming out and speaking with us. I've been a long admirer of your work, and so I just want to say I appreciate you being here. Couple of things that everyone has shared today in introducing themselves and what you said about why are we here. For me, there's a greater sense of urgency about the problems that we're facing. For example, when I was 26, I started fighting a freeway expansion in my backyard, Downey, California. I'm 28 now. That project has been planned longer than I've been alive. And at any time during that process, somebody in a room like this could have said, hey, this is impacting a predominantly working class community, now a predominantly Latino community. This freeway expansion is forcing more people into car dependency. These issues that we're going to be talking about have been in the motion for so long. I just want to stress the urgency and the importance of speaking up and naming these things, because for my community, it's about survival. It's about whether or not the kids that attended the elementary school that I attended are going to be breathing more polluted air, or will they have some of the park that I grew up playing in taken away? Will my neighbors lose their homes? And this has been decades in motion. And I just want to stress the urgency. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. Stress the urgency that what we're here today is very important, because the time to fix things could have been 30 something years ago. The next best time is now. So thank you for talking about the urgency, talking about what it's like to feel things and also understand things. Because yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people in the room might intellectually understand how we plan these things do have negative impacts, but also there are people like us who feel those impacts. So just thank you for bringing it up. Appreciate it. Appreciate you being here. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you in person, not just like your stuff on social media.
Thank you, Tamika, for being here. I wanted to admit, so when my first meeting that CTC related was hearing you speak. And admittedly, when I became a commissioner, I didn't know too much about what I was walking into. And when I heard you and your colleagues discuss equity issues and impacts to community and what it is to be a person in this space and the work that needs to be done, I felt okay, I'm in the right sandbox. I should be here. This is what I want to be doing. And this is worthwhile work. And so I want to thank you for reassuring me personally. I neglected to share during my introduction that I am a Filipino, and that I come from I'm a daughter of immigrants from the Philippines. And that has brought a lot of experience. And actually, I was born in Detroit. So I've had many multicultural experiences and being in California, experienced the gamut of racism to, the feeling that I needed to assimilate, to talking a certain way so that I would be accepted. What I wanted to share is that, you hit a lot of things that resonate with me. And I am also a mother of 2 children. They're biracial, Filipino, Mexico children. And, I fear for them, but I'm also trying to grow them to be models that, that be proud of who you are as a Filipino and a Mexican, and embrace both cultures. They're free spirits. I'm glad to say. One of them, my son, is a senior, and I just wanted to underscore something that Randy said that about the youth opportunity passes. He actually took advantage of it and is one of the children, the students that are part of the 5 million. That we hit a landmark of 5 million rides since May of 2022 of youth taking advantage of transit in the San Diego region. And he has no desire to get his license. He is going to, but he would prefer not to. And I'm very proud of him. I'm fearful, however, of my younger daughter, who is a girl. And honestly, I'm concerned about her safety, not only because she's a woman or a girl, growing to be a woman, but she's in a transition and realizing who she is. Her closest friends are individuals in transition. And I fear for their safety because the communities right now are not, they're not accepting. And so, I fear for them being in the public. I fear for them being in transit at this point, taking transit, because I don't know, who they'll be interacting with. And so I think it's our responsibility as a government body, to make things safe for all people, particularly our youth. Commissioner Martinez said we need to be people-centric. Absolutely. And I think this is the most important part of our job, is that we need to look at our infrastructure in a people-centric way. And, we need to be inclusive and take to account what the needs of our population, no matter what our ages, no matter what our races, no matter what our backgrounds or social economic situation. I'm proud that I've worked in underserved areas all my career, spanning 30 years, believe it or not. And I want to continue to do so. And this work that we're doing right now, I can't stress enough the excitement and the passion that I feel and my colleagues feel, honestly, about, the possibilities of infusing, really meaningful work in this space in our transportation investment, because we really need to be investing in people. So thank you for your words. They resonated and hit me in many different ways, and glad to see you in person finally.
Thank you.
Hey, girlfriend, why aren't you sitting on this end of the table? That was my first question when I saw you in the audience. But well, I wanted to also just say, as a Black woman who has about the whitest name in the entire world at Constance Elizabeth Stewart, You know, I'm a little older than a lot of you, and grew up in a family that came from Black communities and moved to all white communities. And so I was the one Black kid at school where I grew up. And when I actually moved to Humboldt County, I told my parents there were plenty of Black people up there. There were 63. That was plenty to me. So you know, I spent my career with parents that were like, we struggled, we want you to succeed. So keep your mouth shut, call us. Don't make waves, call us. You can call us and talk to us. Eat it, eat it. And I'm at the end of my career thinking about all now as I'm watching the younger generation call it, then walking in and saying, you know, that happened to me too. And having people go, that happened to you too? That was your experience too? Yes, I don't bring my backpack into a grocery store. I put it in my trunk, the trunk of my car. Do I think my neighborhood grocery store is going to think I'm stealing? I don't know. Been living in my house for 30 years. I don't know. I'm not going to take a chance, you know, because there's two kinds of attention. There's being ignored, and then there's being overwatched. And it's both experiences, right? So anyway, I wanted to ask you a question too. And the question, because it was a question that was asked of us, what is your hope for this committee? Since you're not sitting here, what do you hope we accomplish let's just say over the next year? Because I hope you'll be paying attention to us, and I'll see you again.
We'll definitely be paying attention. And there are certain people here who will probably be getting texts from me like, what? You know, I think when we think about equity, for me, I always tend to focus less on like, what are the outcomes? What are the metrics? And I think it's really about a process. And I really hope that, you know, hearing the emotion in the room as you all go around, I hope that doesn't leave. I hope that centered, you know, centering people, not just seeing numbers, seeing people, seeing actual stories. I hope that is fundamental in the process throughout. And the other piece I'll say is there certainly need to be some measurements, right? How are dollars allocated? Who is part of the decision making? How is the outreach going? And how are you truly engaging people about what the work plan is and what the deliverables are? And then how are you reporting back and allowing people to hold you accountable? But I'll come back to something I said earlier. I think too often we're throwing around the word equity, and it's not really clear what we mean. And I think we need to be clear that we're all on the same page. And for me, diversity, equity, and inclusion are these words that get used interchangeably, and they're just not the same thing, right? And so, yes, I hope this group is focused on diversity, which in my mind is just like having diverse faces around the table. And I would, you know, give yourself a check. In some ways, I do wonder, you know, are there experiences that aren't being represented here? How do folks who are living with disabilities interact with transportation throughout the state? How do folks who are not English speakers, who are not literate, how are folks who are re-engaging in society after being policed and surveilled? How are trans folks? You know, how are Indigenous folks, right? All of these identities that people don't just drop once they get on transit, once they're driving, once they're walking, once they're biking. And so I think, you know, that's how I think of some diversity goals and how do you engage these groups. I think equity is about, you know, making sure that those who have historically gotten the least get the most. And I think that's really hard whenever you talk about government, whenever you talk about funding, whenever you try to make things work, because we are very much a place where people say geographic equity and they mean geographic equality and everybody getting their fair share. But I really, you know, I'm not one of those people who thinks a rising tide lifts all boats. And the reason I don't think that is the example I always give, like if Beyonce and Jay-Z are on a yacht and I'm on a little dinghy with holes in it, like the rising tide might actually make it worse for me. The rising tide may just like do nothing for me, right? And so we have to make sure as we're making these changes, those who are going to be on the front lines of those change, you know, we might build a highway through a low-income community of color and totally kick a ton of people out, but feel like we're connecting two commercial corridors that will enable economic opportunity, right? And so I think we can't just say the tide argument. And so I think equity is about who's historically gotten the least and are they getting the most. And to me, that is different than inclusion. I think inclusion is when there is like a true shift of power, right? And so you know, if you're at a nonprofit and you have a youth advisory board, you might think you're inclusive, but do the youth actually have any decision-making power, right? Adonia once wrote something, Commissioner Lugo once wrote something about too often we get into these spaces and people love our exotic faces, but they don't want to hear our ideas. They don't want to let us make decisions. And so I think if you're truly, you know, focusing on process of what I hope this group does, I think when you're thinking about equity work, you have to think about power and you have to think about privilege. And so you have to think about, you know, who is going to be most impacted by whatever we're deciding. And then you have to look around at the decision-making table and say, are they here? Not are we speaking for them, but are those who are going to be most impacted, whether it's bad or good, are they here? And if they're not, then you have a power imbalance and you can't get to these equitable outcomes and these inclusive outcomes if there isn't an acknowledgement that there has to be some shifting of power. And then we have to ask ourselves, well, what privilege did you have to be here? Did you have to have internet access? Did you have to be able to access this meeting in English, whatever it is? Did you have to have a certain degree? Did you have to have the middle of your day free? Did you have to have childcare, right? And so all of those questions about power and privilege, I would love if this group layers that into their equity work.
And unfortunately, that's all the time we have for questions and comments here. But, you know, this continues. I hope we feel inspired. I want to ask if there's any public comment.
Yes, thank you. A reminder to our virtual attendees that you may use the virtual hand raise feature in case you're waiting to do so to indicate that you wish to present a question or comment at this time. So I'll give you a moment to do so. In the meantime, I wanted to check in with our Spanish interpretation channel to see if there were any questions or comments coming from there. Hearing, oh, we do have one virtual hand raised at this time. And I got confirmation from our Spanish interpreter. There are no questions there. We have Peggy Martinez. Peggy, you should now be free to unmute yourself and make your comment.
Okay, am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Do you hear me? Oh, okay. Well, I appreciate all the discussion I've been hearing. Real quick, really thrilled to hear how many people are including disability in their comments, and as folks are thinking about inclusion and equity. A lot of time, I mean, we really honestly, like in a lot of the language that exists for diversity, equity, and inclusion, the DEI stuff, disability is really not there. So stoked that people are saying it out loud in this group. So that's really it. Thank you guys. Looking forward to, you know, getting things done, frankly.
Thank you, Peggy.
I just wanted to confirm that I see no other virtual attendee indicating they wish to comment at this time. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. And thanks everyone for the thoughtful dialogue and insightful questions and comments. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Tamika, again. With that, we will, in the interest of time, go ahead and move on to our fifth item, report and discussion of our 2023 Equity Advisory Committee Priority Focus Areas Survey results. In this item, I will share the results of our survey that we conducted in January. And I'm going to do my best to also create plenty of time for discussion, to hear from you all, and have thoughts and comments. And we will also have public comment on this item. So I apologize for not mentioning that earlier. If there are folks from the public who are listening in that want to add public comment, there will be an opportunity at the end of this item. So thank you, Brandy. All right. So this presentation is our 2023 member support, and we are the Interagency Equity Advisory Committee Executive Meeting 1. Next slide, please. So in January 2023, prior to conducting this meeting, we wanted to gain some focus around discussion that we would be having here with our EAC members. And so per some good direction from our leadership, we conducted a survey that we sent out virtually. It had 12 questions and 14 out of 15 members responded. And the goal of this survey was to get a sense of kind of our membership goals, as well as the priority focus areas that are listed in our scope that was adopted in June 2022, as well as any other priority focus areas not listed within that scope. And to also get a sense of areas of planning, funding, or programming that members would like to learn more about. And this is the beautiful intro page. Okay, next slide, please. So we asked folks to list 5 top priority focus areas, and we had a tie. So we are listing 6. And again, these are from the adopted scope that our 3 agency, our partners worked on and adopted in June 2022. So this is kind of where we imagine the direction of this next year of work is going to be headed. So the number 1 priority focus areas identified in the survey was improving equitable outcomes in state transportation planning guidelines. Number 2, developing best practices to elevate equity in project planning and delivery. Number 3, incorporating meaningful community engagement practices into transportation plans, policies, and projects. Number 4, improving equitable outcomes in state transportation funding program guidelines. Oh, I'll turn on my video. And quantitative and qualitative metrics for evaluating equity benefits and outcomes. And number 6, to assess equitable outcomes in projects. Next slide, please. So what's next? What are we going to do with this? Results from this survey will and dialogue that we'll have after this presentation will determine our priority focus areas, educational workshop themes that we'd like to co-develop with our partners, with folks here, with our regional partners, and other topics for the calendar year 2023. We will incorporate the results and feedback into committee meeting agendas, which we will be co-developing in the future, educational presentations and learning materials, and research responsibilities among community members. Next slide, please. Right, so we have some graphics displaying some of the results of the questions that we asked. So we asked committee members, will you be seeking compensation for your participation in this committee? And 12 responded yes, and 2 responded no. For this first year of our committee, we obtained a grant from a nonprofit, a partner who is kind of helping us bridge the gap of being able to provide compensation for our EAC members. And it's within the policies and of the California Department of Human Resources. And we also asked members to identify the length of time they are willing to serve. And we're excited to see that so many people are ready to do 2 years with 11 folks, and 3 folks are able to serve for 1 year. And so in our next cycle of applications, we'll be looking to fill those seats. And the intention also of this committee, as a reminder, is for there to be staggered terms of 1 and 2 years. Next slide, please. All right, so when we asked our members what are your top priority focus areas for 2023 based on the adopted scope, I will read the top 2 because I actually read a lot already them, but you can see here that this is just, we wanted to make sure that we gave attention to all of the scope areas. So improving equitable outcomes in state transportation planning guidelines, developing best practices to elevate equity in project planning and delivery, incorporating meaningful community engagement practices in transportation plans, projects, and policies, and several others, which I invite you to check out in the slides. I'll give you a moment with that. Thanks, Brandy. So we also asked folks to identify if they're interested in serving as chair or co-chair, and 4 said a resounding yes, 8 a maybe, which I'm excited about too, and 2 said no, which is also great because you're here. As a side note, we will also be discussing kind of our governance structures, figuring out our chair and our co-chair selection process in our next meeting. This meeting today is, focused on getting to know each other. It's our executive meeting. And later on in late spring, we will be planning a meeting where we will decide together how we want to proceed on selecting a chair or co-chair. Next slide, please. And I am not going to read everything on this slide, but we also wanted to know what other areas of focus we wanted this committee to address. And I think there's a couple of key themes that popped up, including right-of-way and property holding and how we can use it to benefit underrepresented communities. We have a lot of interest in affordable housing projects near public transportation, infrastructure, mobility and access, and climate change, meaningfully compensating community-based organizations for their time on supporting projects, tribal resources, seniors and special needs populations, elevating the needs of people with disabilities, disaster relief in transportation, and closing gaps in addressing federal directives and state directives relating to equity. Next slide, please. And when we asked members to identify kind of in an open answer question, if there are other areas related to transportation planning, funding, or program that they would like to learn more about, we had some great ideas for future workshops that we would like to hold and put together. And I think they're very much also in alignment with areas of focus and education that we've heard from our partners outside and advocate partners, as well as leadership in terms of how funding works, how we can move forward with understanding the interplay between our 3 state agencies, which we're figuring out today as part of this project, this EAC. Federal funding, how all the plans work collaboratively, broadband development, leveraging federal and state dollars, tribal projects, low-income affordable housing projects, how funding is sought at different levels, and really a focus on understanding funding, which we really want to support future educational opportunities. Next slide, please. Okay, so where do we go from here with this information and from this meeting? So we will be having, as I mentioned earlier, an Equity Advisory Committee only meeting. We're looking into May in a Northern California location, and we will again be offering in-person and virtual options. And I want to just give a shout out to the admin team for really supporting us in bringing this on into Zoom realm for this meeting. I know it was a heavy lift and really appreciate and will continue to improve. And then in the meantime, we have a lot of opportunities to collaborate. So first of all, thanks to those of you on the committee who are supporting the SB1 funding program application selection process, which is in motion. And stay tuned for more statewide initiatives from the commission, from Caltrans, and from agency, and ways to be involved in our various processes. So again, topics to cover for our future EAC only meeting are going to be governance structures, elections, choosing committee leadership, and choosing ex officio members, so non-voting members. And then really we want to know from our members what they would like to see on our next agenda. And I believe with that is my last slide. So thank you. And I'd like to leave maybe 10 minutes for, what, based on the survey, based on now kind of having the information be presented back, some thoughts around these focus areas, and what we would like to bring onto the May agenda. So thank you. If there are any. No, yeah, thanks.
Thanks for that presentation. It was helpful to see all the survey results laid out. I think something that would be helpful to help ground this group is to get that sort of backgrounder on the agencies and the interplay between how you all work together. I think that will help inform, your roles and responsibilities, where you do have authority making decision versus not. And that I think will help inform, the recommendations and things that come out of this committee.
I just add on to that, excuse me. I think also being explicit, again, like sort of what the agencies control and then what sort of happens at the local level. Because I think at least in my work, I deal a lot with cities, counties, and also MPO agencies. So just having a clearer, connection of how that all flows. Thanks.
So Sequoia, kind of piggyback off of that, I think just a general understanding of how the regional transportation planning, the RTPs come together and kind of lead to project programming and planning. We talk about projects that have been on the books for so many years, and there's a reason why that is. And I think that we want to be mindful of, if we are going to be looking to make big changes in that space, here's kind of an explanation as to why we are in this state and how we can get to that state. I think also one of the things, a lot of the focus is on making sure that our transportation system is equitable in the sense of access, by whether it's seniors, people with children, special needs populations, people with disabilities. So if we could have an explanation as to what maybe the agencies, the transportation agencies themselves are doing around making their systems accessible. Because I will tell you again from my introductory story this morning, there is no way a woman with 2 kids and strollers would have gotten on anything that I rode on today to get to downtown LA. In fact, I'm going to put these shoes in bleach before I take them into my house. It was not a pleasant experience.
Sequoia, I'd like to see calendaring. I'd like to see kind of mapping out what agencies are working on, prioritizing over the years, when guideline projects are due, how we may be able to engage so we can have those conversations in advance and be able to engage fully in them. And then also along the lines of, just would love to see like project lists and see if there's potential for us to be able to weigh in on those, or at least provide some guidance on how we think projects should be prioritized.
I speak a lot, so I just wanted to make sure everyone got in. I well, when I was at OPR, there was a project that actually just went live recently of a collection of all the general plans in the state, and a data mapping tool where you can plug in, a jurisdiction in the state and look at the plans. When you look at how many transportation agencies or operators there are in the state, it's always a different answer. And their plans don't necessarily map onto each other. So when I'm looking at a short range transit plan for LA Metro, which is more than just a transit operator, right? Because LA Metro is, a metropolitan planning organization, transportation operator. They run the calls for projects. So what I'm getting at, because I don't think I have enough time to go into the rabbit hole that I'm jumping into, how can we look at all of the plans at the state level, the plans at the local level, the plans at the county level, the MPO level, the SCSs, all of them, because they all say different things, even though they all refer to each other. And then once we can get them all in one place, how can we then track them to see how effective they are? And people I've worked with in the room are nodding because they're like, oh, he's saying it again. Hi, Jeannie. But yeah, I think that it's important to just take stock, because I mean, what those plans are like. When I was 8 years old, going to the board of supervisors and sitting there for 8 hours and then saying, hey, I have this idea. And you multiply that by the millions of folks who've been in this process for the past, I'm going to say 60 years. Like, I'm going to go back to the Urban Mass Transportation Act of 1964. Let's go there. So like from that point forward, we actually acknowledged, okay, we're going to put money aside and we're going to dole it out to the world, even though we don't quite know what that world is. So what's been going on since 1964? And maybe we don't need to look at every plan since 1964, but maybe the last 20 years, let's look at them and see where we're going and where we'd like to go and what we've overlooked. It's funny that the Four Corridors program in San Francisco was Bayshore, Geary, Van Ness, and Chinatown North Beach. Well, we built everything but North Beach, but it's funny that like now, because we have new equity measures, North Beach may not come along until we look at communities that are more, disadvantaged. But the question is like, maybe they want to go to North Beach, maybe they work in North Beach. And so we're going to have to start looking at, when we say, well, we want to create this process that's going to serve, communities that are underserved. Well, we're all going to the same places. I mean, we probably work at the same districts. I know that work's weird now. We probably go to the same beach on Saturday, and it'd be nice to take a bus, right? Or rail. So the plans, let's see the plans.
Thanks, Sequoia. I'd be interested in learning more about the overview, the budgets of each of the three major transportation agencies, and also an overview of the goals that guide the work of those three agencies as well, so that we can begin to understand how the two interplay and how they may be aligned, and look for potential alignment opportunities as well. And then specifically interested in learning about the criteria that's utilized to determine which projects get funded when the agencies, the Caltrans districts and the MPOs throughout the state want to elevate their projects for funding. What's that criteria and what is that weighting within that criteria look like? Thanks.
And I just wanted to add, everything is great. I'm really excited about what we're doing, but I think that when we're talking about who's missing at the table, we need to really address our youth. for me, when I mentioned my son Aiden, I can't do the work that I do and not include Aiden. Aiden needs to be at the table. And hopefully we can take this experience, because I feel the embodiment of all this love and energy and movement for change has to be brought to their space so that they can see a future, so that they can, derive a thought processes for leadership and capacity. Because like I'm 57 and I'm still a baby. I feel it. I want to do so much. My son's going to come to the age where he's going to want to look for something. And I want to be able to say, this is what you can do too. And other children, when I came in here, I was sharing, I thought we were just going to sit at like a regular table and have this meeting. And I came in, I had no idea. And I'm really transparent. Like I'm about as hood as they come, but I just went to school. That's what I tell the kids, you can do this too. And it's important for me to be real with myself, because there are kids that don't see themselves outside of that paradigm. There are kids that are riding the transit, that's all they're ever going to see. And their only destination is to get to the job or to get to the school. And they will never know what it's like to go across even California. We need to make those experiences for them rich and real so that they can have dreams and they can be here. And when I came in, I was on my Facebook. I was doing Facebook Live. And I know I probably am like ignorant to some, but to me, I want my people that I go back to see that I'm here. And I didn't see myself here. I had a lot of anger when I was growing up. Adverse childhood experiences are real. And they're part of who you all are here too, because I hear it. So I think that it's important that we need to include that part of who we are in these spaces, because I want Aiden to ride his bike across town and not have to worry about somebody doing something to him. And I want your child to be able to be on the bus and not feel that they have to change who they are in order not to get jumped or have some ignorant person say something that's not acceptable. And they're not here. So we need to include their voices. And we need to give them those robust and meaningful experiences like I experienced today. I was in Hawthorne. Hello, forgot the gentleman. I was in Hawthorne. I was in Job Corps when I was like 19, 20 years old. And I lived on 11th and Broadway. I got caught in that elevator during the earthquake, I've had some really interesting experiences in LA, but I come back because I want to see what it's like. And those spaces, they're not good. Those kids are still living that life, and I don't want that. And I'm here to make a difference, but I also want to make sure that I leave a legacy for those that are going to come to continue making that difference. So it's our kids.
Sequoia. Oh, so not to make this meeting really, really long, the next one in May, but there's a couple of agencies that I know of that are have published some really exciting papers on equity resource guide put out by SCAG, and then SANDAG, the Metropolitan Planning Organization in San Diego, also has an equity action plan. And even if we just provided links to those, and I'm sure other people have other resources, I think that this would help the committee really get grounded in the work that we've been called to do. I have a more general question, but I want to know explicitly what tangible power does this committee have? What tangible influence? Because we could get together and talk about what we would like to see, what we would like to happen, but tangibly, how much influence and power does this committee have over all three agencies? Do we have tangible influence over how budget can be spent, from moving funding from freeway construction to multimodal
pathways to talking about opening bathrooms, making sure that there are emergency stations. So yeah, so if we're going to name this, I want to know what kind of tangible power and influence that we have.
Sequoia, if I may, and just one, I want to thank you for the tremendous work that you've done and the 3 other agencies, just tremendous. And just to the sister here, you're very beautiful and thank you for being here. Yeah, I have a similar story to yours. I never thought I would ever be elected. I never thought I would sit on the state commission. You know, my mom spent most of her life in prison, was a heroin addict, a prostitute. My 73-year-old great-grandmother took care of me. And so my lived experience is very different than most who've ever been elected. And I'm not scared to tell you where I come from. I do come from the hood, and those that do come from the hood don't get these opportunities, and they don't see people like us. So thank you for speaking truth to power and where you come from. But number 2, this right work of our time, and that's what I call it. It's the right work of our time. And it doesn't not just mean how we get the work done and what processes we take to get that work done. The way this is going to get done is based on the values of our transportation agencies in the state of California. And number 2, how we attend to relationships. That's the way anything gets done. And you have Mr. Tavares here, you have Mr. Tolson here. Did I say it right? Yay. And here as commissioners, attending to relationships is what matters. That's going to be able to get, you know, our Caltrans director to say, hey, you know what, we're going to shift our values because we're listening to these folks here and they're on the ground. The last thing that I just want to share with you that I think it's very important, that beyond being interconnected and interdependent and taking a systems approach is important, but realize, and we haven't alluded to it, and she did, is how do we include other people? And it's not just about them participating on a Zoom or coming here, is that we really need to attend to those relationships in a meaningful way. And so we're talking about, we want to invest and bring youth to the table. Well, what does that look like? What does that look like bringing the disability community to the table? It's great to say they need to participate, but what does that mean? Because I'm going to be quite honest with you. Our government entities don't do that kind of work very well. We are a very top-down system. We're not a bottoms-up system, and we're trying to be that. But the way to do that, it takes time, it takes energy, right? When we're doing all these hearings, we have to be patient, we have to listen, and we have to understand. And I believe this is the body. Based on my 2 hours or 3 hours being here, I am beyond impressed with the questions that you're asking, your input, your heart. That's going to help these agencies and us move forward. But remember, attend to relationships first. All the processes, setting goals and outcomes we shouldn't be talking about that first. That's going to come. But attend to the relationship first. How do you build a better relationship with Mr. Tavares? How do you build a better relationship with Mr. Weiss, Tamika Butler, with this commission, with the rest of the state and these transportation agencies? Because that's what's going to move us forward. So thank you.
There are times of charm. One of my first meetings in this building, and actually was the first one I had to take minutes for at Metro, was the fair hearing in April of 2007. Can anyone guess how many people were in this room? It's 1,500. We had the whole building shut down. And here I was, like, first meeting ever, taking minutes officially for Metro. And I was like, whew. And what was funny is that I was brand new here and I was wearing a tie, and it's probably why I shouldn't have worn a tie today. But the bus riders union folks were looking at me all crazy. Like I was like the establishment. I was like, y'all don't know, like this is what I did in San Francisco. And so if we want young people here, like, I mean, we started youth commission. There's a youth transit advisory board in the Bay Area, right? Like, I mean, we all have those contacts here. And I think that we could be bringing those folks here. And I mean, maybe there needs to be like, and I don't know if it's for us to do or for us to help a community organization to do, but maybe there needs to be a conference where the disability, or I'm sorry, accessibility advisory committees and the youth advisory committees and the equity, different groups of the state, of the different agencies can come together and give us an update on what they do, so that like we can help carry forward, like, because we aren't like the first folks to come together to talk about equity in California, right? Like, and related to transportation. So let's illuminate the voices. I mean, Naila comes from transform. Wait, climate plan. I'm so sorry. Right? Darnell from transform. I'm mixing up things, but like my point is we all come from the organizing world as well, and we can pull some folks together. And it's funny you guys talked about Anon. You're right. I think she's the reason I got to study city planning at Cal, and much respect to her. And we lost a good one at Cal.
William, I'd like to address that. Many years ago, I attended a conference in Fresno, and it was the Smart Valley Places. You know, it was kind of like the beginning and the inception of these concepts that we're talking about. And just like today, I feel so moved and excited, but we didn't do anything. So I think that when you're asking, like, what governance do we have? What decision making do we have? Do we have any teeth? And I think that's the real issue here, is that when we do these changes, we have to make people accountable. We can't just say, all right, we're going to do this and not have any actionable response and accountability to that response. I've been working on, you know, you're talking about SB 1000 and jurisdictions, and I've seen environmental justice elements that are supposed to be put into policy, into the framework for each jurisdiction, and they basically take the words and jumble them up and check the box and submit a paper and say that they made a difference. When I live in a community that hasn't seen sidewalks for I don't know how long, hasn't had shelters, hasn't had coverings, and yet they're perfectly happy with what they submitted and no one's done anything about it. That can't go on anymore. And so even having a youth action team or task force or whatever is not going to make a world of difference if they can't sit there and turn something in and say, you all said one thing, then this is what we want changed. At least one thing that they get done and do it, you know. And the same thing here. We're here and we have the solutions, we have the answers. I mean, I've been in the trenches my whole life. Even before I was in environmental justice, I was doing health. And I tell people the first job that I did as a child was I was an interpreter. I was already creating access for other people. So I didn't have a name for it. I just did it because that's what I was raised to do. I love helping. But at the same time, there are a lot of other people out there that want to do the same thing, but they can't do it because they don't even have the money to even get a job, to get to where they got to be, to live, to prosper. And we're here and we're still not doing it. So I guess we got to challenge ourselves and say that even though we may not get paid or we may not have the decision-making process, that we make such a clamoring sound with what we're doing here, the changes that we're doing, the voices that are being, you know, expressed, that they have to do what we're doing, that they have to take what's going to happen with you and to other departments, you know, Caltrans. I sit on all these committees and commissions and all this, and I love it. Don't get me wrong. Thank you very much. But ¿qué vamos a hacer? Like, what are we really going to do? You know? And there's nothing more disheartening than going home and saying, well, I hope that something's going to happen. Or it was nice, pero ¿qué pasó? Like, what really happened? So I think that's the thing. Put some teeth into what we're going to do. And also make enough sound. We should be having this on YouTube. We should be having this so that people hear the changes. This is history. I don't know, but for me, this is history. And yeah, California, we're progressive. No, but I believe that in any other place, there are people that are hungry and they want to see this kind of, synergy, this kind of movement happening so that they can finally get the guts to say, okay, let's do this. Or someone in their job that because it's the institution and they're not allowed to have that risky shift will actually say something and say, oh, we're going to have a YouTube video we're going to discuss and look, this is what they're doing. Maybe make a difference, maybe make that change. I mean, Naila, we're going to have a poetry slam and we're going to talk about transportation and we're going to do a video, photo voice with UC Berkeley. And we want to include this because this is part of what we're doing and not just being in a silo with what we're doing, but bringing other folks here and saying, y'all are doing something great. We're doing something great. Let's make it bigger so that we make enough noise to make the change. So I'm with you.
Thanks, Martha. I believe this is also being broadcast on YouTube, so. Oh, will be uploaded to YouTube afterwards. So yes, thank you. We're in it. So I'm gonna close out the comments. Thanks everyone. We have Peggy Martinez on the line and that'll be the end of comments for this, but then I'll also be having public comment. So Peggy, please.
Hey, everyone. Just listening to all of the different perspectives that are being shared. And I'm just thrilled again to hear everybody. When I applied for the committee, I said very clearly in my application materials that I served on a variety of advisory committees and that I am frankly not interested in utilizing my time and taking the time to just talk about things, that policy decisions must result from our time together. Or I didn't, I would prefer not to engage. And I felt really pretty impressed that they still selected me. So I think that the powers that be here are pretty clear that we want to actually get things done. And I think that discussing things is super important, but I'm extremely interested in, in the next steps and in learning more about how our work together is going to result in policy and funding and improvements to people's lives so that people can have the kinds of experiences that they for their whatever they wanted. What California just wanted to chime in and when it comes to disability activism, I am here to be a part of it. So yeah, anyway, thank you all so much for all your great words at this first meeting. It's super inspiring to me.
Thank you, Peggy. And thanks everyone and for the continued part of this process. So with that, is there any public comment?
We did receive one written comment from Stella Ursua. She wrote, "Thank you, commissioners and advisory committee members. Happy to be working with you all. I do not see any indication of any other virtual comment from any attendee at this time."
Great, thank you. So with that, concludes tab 5. And now we will move on to the end of our meeting where we will have tab 6, interagency announcements, followed by a quick recap and next steps. So Carolyn, I'll pass it to you.
Thank you, Sequoia. So I promise this is the final item on today's agenda. And I think this is a perfect segue after this conversation and discussing some of the priorities of this committee. So I just want to acknowledge the fact that our agencies are very excited about the upcoming work of the Equity Advisory Committee. And we recognize the great potential that the EAC has to inform and guide our work. So as we identify some of these opportunities to engage with the EAC, we really hope to do so in alignment with the priorities identified by the committee members. So our interagency team has been discussing some of these potential statewide programs and initiatives that would benefit from the involvement of the EAC members. So this won't be a conversation that we can have today since we're out of time, of course, but we wanted to let you know that we are working on this and we look forward to your input. So a couple next steps that you can expect. Essentially, we will be sending a follow-up email with a list of a lot of these opportunities with some background information, more context, allow you to mull it over, think through it, see if this is something in alignment with your work. And then we will also provide a timeline for these initiatives to see where that falls within this first year and the second year of the committee operating. And then we can also propose some ideas for determining compensation based on the anticipated workload. So a couple things that we are doing on our end. So mostly for our agencies, we are asking ourselves the question, what programs, policy initiatives, or other efforts do we want the EAC to weigh in on? And then for the EAC members that are here, I want you to think about what topics do the EAC members actually want to engage with and where do you see you could have the most impact? So at this point, you can expect to hear from us, of course, and this will be a two-way dialogue, and we definitely want to see what this committee wants to work on. So I'll pause there. Is there any public comment?
I do not see any virtual attendees looking to comment at this time.
Is there any comment on the Spanish line?
Can the Spanish interpreter confirm whether or not they have any comment at this time, please? They confirm they do not have any at this time.
Thank you, Justin. Sequoia, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So as we finish and come together for kind of the end of this meeting, I just really want to express sincere gratitude for everyone who made this possible, for our teams coming together. I think this was a really powerful experience in a lot of different ways. And the fact that we could be here in person was challenging and moving and important. So thank you so much. I just really quickly want to go through a little bit about what we heard today and share back, but know that this is not an exhaustive list. These are just some of the things that we felt were really notable right now, and that we'll be definitely working to add to this together. So it was very clear to our team that equitable transportation is near and dear to all of us in the room, from meeting the needs of people with disabilities to people who can't afford or don't want to drive, to people who live in areas not easily served by multimodal transportation. The responsibility to work towards more equitable transportation needs to fall on everyone, not just on traditionally marginalized populations. We need to bring power and privilege to the table. And there is a sense of urgency in the work that we are doing. Transportation is the prism through which all equity issues come to light. And it's very important that we understand that there is importance over process, over metrics. There's a lot of emotion here. Let's keep it here. We really want to address who's not in our room in person or virtually. What perspectives are we missing here at this table? We want to dive into what power does the EAC have? What is going to come out of this committee's work? And really address and work on and developing learning opportunities to understand our agencies and our partner agencies, funding, policy development processes, and planning from local to state levels. Do I need to take public comment on this? Okay, so with that concludes our meeting. I really appreciate that. So we have a reception nearby at the Homebound Brew House at Union Station, starting at 4:30, which all are welcome to attend. And we really appreciate you being here. And thanks to Avital and Carolyn for being great teammates throughout this process. So thank you all. Adjourn.